The twin sons of Ashara beat down mercilessly on Marcus Webb's repair station, turning the corrugated metal walls into an oven. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with an oil-stained rag, squinting at the ancient cooling unit he'd been trying to resurrect for the past 3 hours. 5 years on this forgotten dust ball of a planet, and he still wasn't used to the heat. The isolation, though, that he'd mastered. After what happened on Vega Prime, solitude felt like a gift rather than a punishment. A faint sound caught his attention, something that didn't belong to the usual symphony of wind and distant wildlife. Marcus set down his tools, his hand instinctively moving toward the plasma cutter on his workbench. Not quite a weapon, but it would do in a pinch. The sound came again. Footsteps, light and hurried, accompanied by labored breathing. Marcus moved to the front of his shop, peering through the dusty windows at the shimmering landscape beyond. 2 figures emerged from the heat haze, stumbling toward his station. Even from a distance, Marcus could see they weren't human. The taller one had skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, subtle patterns of blue and violet dancing across her exposed arms. Her companion, clearly a child, clung to her hand with desperate determination. Marcus hesitated. Every instinct honed by years in the outer colonies screamed that strangers meant trouble. But something about the way the woman looked over her shoulder, fear evident in every movement, tugged at something he thought he'd buried on Vega Prime. He stepped outside, immediately regretting it as the heat hit him like a physical blow. The woman spotted him and froze, her free hand moving protectively in front of the child. Now that they were closer, Marcus could see the elegant bone structure of her face, the way her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and most striking of all, the luminescent marks that traced delicate patterns along her neck and arms, markings that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. Valerian. He'd only met one before, years ago, but the species was unmistakable. "Please," the woman said, her voice heavily accented but clear. "Water, my daughter. We need water." The child's lips were cracked, her face flushed with heat exhaustion. Whatever reservations Marcus had evaporated in an instant. "Inside," he said, jerking his head toward the shop. "Quickly." The woman hesitated for only a moment before practically dragging her daughter through the door. Marcus followed, sealing the entrance behind him and activating the shop's modest climate control. The temperature dropped immediately, and he heard the child sigh of relief. "Sit," Marcus ordered, pointing to a worn bench against the wall. He grabbed 2 water bottles from his personal supply, cracking them open before handing them over. "Slow sips. Don't chug it." The woman helped her daughter drink first, her eyes never leaving the child's face. Only when the girl had drained half the bottle did the woman allow herself a drink. Her throat worked as she swallowed, and Marcus found himself watching the way the bioluminescent patterns along her neck brightened slightly with each gulp. "Thank you," she said finally, her jade-colored eyes meeting his. "We've been walking for 2 days. I wasn't sure we would find anyone." "You're lucky you found me and not the Korvath," Marcus replied, leaning against his workbench. "They control most of this region, and they're not known for their hospitality." The woman's expression darkened, and her marks pulsed a deep crimson. "The Korvath are why we're running." Of course they were. Marcus rubbed his face, feeling the stubble of several days' growth. "Start from the beginning. I need to know what I'm dealing with." The woman glanced at her daughter, who had curled up on the bench, already half asleep despite her fear. "My name is Sivara," she said quietly. "This is Nissi. We escaped from a Korvath labor camp 3 days ago." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Labor camp? Those bastards expanded their operations out here?" Sivara nodded. "They raided our settlement on the coast. Took everyone they didn't kill. Valerians." She touched the glowing marks on her arm. "Our bioluminescence makes us valuable. They harvest it for—" Her voice broke. for drugs, for their pleasure houses, for anything they can profit from. The casual cruelty shouldn't have surprised Marcus. He'd seen enough of humanity's darkness and knew that malice transcended species. But something about the quiet devastation in Severa's voice, the way she held herself together for her daughter's sake, made his blood boil. "How did you escape?" he asked. "A transport accident. The vehicle rolled during a sandstorm. Nissi and I managed to slip away in the chaos." Severa's fingers found her daughter's hair, stroking it gently. "But they'll be looking for us. The Korvath don't forgive losses. How many were in your group?" 40 of us. We're all that got away." Marcus moved to the window, scanning the horizon. "Nothing yet, but that would change. You can't stay here. The Korvath know every settlement, every way station in a 100-kilometer radius. They'll check them all." "I know," Sivara said softly. "We just needed water, a few hours rest. Then we'll move on." "To where?" Marcus turned to face her. "The next settlement is 80 kilometers east, and it's run by Korvath sympathizers. West is nothing but dead zones for 300 kilometers. North is the free territories," Sivara interrupted. "If we can reach them, we'll be safe. That's a 5-day journey on foot through some of the harshest terrain on this planet. With a child." Marcus shook his head. "You'll never make it." Sivara's luminescent marks flared bright with sudden anger. "Then what would you have us do? Go back? Let them turn my daughter into a living drug farm?" Her voice rose, and Nissi stirred on the bench. Sivara immediately softened her tone, but her eyes remained fierce. "I will die before I let them touch her again." The passion in her words, the absolute conviction, reminded Marcus of someone else. Someone he'd failed to protect when it mattered most. His sister's face flashed through his mind, the way she'd looked at him with trust and hope right before. He pushed the memory away violently. "I didn't say you should go back," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "I'm thinking, why would you help us at all?" Sivara asked, studying him with those unsettling jade eyes. "We're nothing to you. Helping us only brings trouble to your door." It was a fair question. Marcus didn't have a good answer, at least not one that didn't involve unpacking trauma he'd spent 5 years trying to bury. So instead, he said, "Maybe I'm tired of watching the Korvath take whatever they want." Before Sivara could respond, a distant sound cut through the shop's climate control hum. Engines, multiple vehicles. Approaching fast, Marcus cursed and moved to his monitoring equipment. The screen showed 3 signatures converging on his position from the southeast. "They're here," he said flatly. Sivara was on her feet instantly, scooping up Nissi despite the child's groggy protests. "We'll go out the back. Lead them away from you." Too late for that. Marcus pulled a hidden panel aside, revealing a small arsenal of weapons. He selected a pulse rifle and a backup pistol. "They saw you come in here. If you run now, they'll just hunt you down and then come back to deal with me. So what do we do?" Marcus checked the rifle's charge and allowed himself a grim smile. "We convince them that chasing you isn't worth the trouble." Sivara's marks pulsed an uncertain yellow. "You would fight for strangers?" "Call it a character flaw," Marcus replied, moving toward the front of the shop. Through the window, he could now see the vehicles clearly 3 armored haulers bristling with weaponry and hostility. They skidded to a stop in a cloud of dust about 20 meters from his shop. The doors opened, and 6 Korvath warriors emerged. They were a brutish species, all thick scales and corded muscle, with faces that looked like someone had taken human features and rearranged them into something vaguely reptilian. The leader, distinguished by the scars across his snout and the heavier armor, stepped forward. "Human," the Korvath called out, his voice like gravel in a blender. "We know you're harboring our property. Send them out, and we'll leave you alive. Marcus activated the shop's external speakers. Don't see any property here. Just me and my work. You're welcome to move along. The Korvath leader laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. I admire courage, even stupid courage. But you're interfering in Korvath business. Last chance, human? Give us the Valyrians. Marcus glanced back at Sivara, who stood with Missy clutched to her chest. The fear in her eyes was matched by the determination in the set of her jaw. Whatever else she was a survivor. And something about her made his decision easier than it should have been. He turned back to the window and raised his rifle. Come and take them. The first shot from the Korvath shattered Marcus's front window, spraying glass across the shop floor. He returned fire immediately, the pulse rifle's brilliant blue bolt catching one of the warriors in the shoulder and spinning him around. Not a kill shot, but enough to make the others think twice about rushing forward. Get to the back room. Marcus shouted to Sivara. There's a reinforced storage area behind the tool cabinets. Code is 7492. Sivara didn't argue. She ran, carrying Missy, her luminescent marks blazing white with fear. Marcus laid down covering fire, forcing the Korvath to take shelter behind their vehicles. He knew this was a delaying tactic at best. Once they decided to coordinate their assault, his shop's thin walls wouldn't provide much protection. The Korvath leader's voice boomed across the compound. You're making a mistake, human. We have authorization from the territorial governor. You're harboring stolen property. Stolen property? Marcus shouted back, ducking as return fire scorched the wall above his head. They're living beings, you piece of... An explosion rocked the shop, and Marcus was thrown backward. His ears rang, and for a moment he couldn't tell up from down. Smoke filled his lungs. They'd used a concussion grenade. Serious escalation. Through the ringing in his ears, Marcus heard different engines, lighter and faster than the Korvath haulers. He struggled to his feet, rifle raised, expecting the worst out instead. A sleek racing vessel dropped from the sky like a meteor, its ventral cannons already firing. The Korvath scattered as energy bolts chewed up the ground around their vehicles. One hauler exploded in a fireball that sent warriors diving for cover. The racing ship touched down between Marcus's shop and the Korvath position. Its boarding ramp dropped, and a figure emerged, human, male, dressed in a battered pilot's jacket and moving with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Well, the newcomer called out cheerfully. Looks like I picked the right time to stop for repairs. He was younger than Marcus, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that looked like it hadn't seen a comb in days and a roguish grin that probably got him in as much trouble as it got him out of. He carried a custom blaster pistol in each hand, and as Marcus watched, he fired both simultaneously at different targets with unsettling accuracy. The Korvath leader roared something in his native language. The remaining warriors fell back to their vehicles, dragging their wounded with them. The leader pointed at Marcus and at the newcomer, making a throat-cutting gesture before climbing into the lead hauler. Engines roared, and the Korvath convoy retreated in a cloud of dust, and fury-out Marcus lowered his rifle, still trying to process what had just happened. The stranger holstered his weapons and turned with that same easy grin. Jace Colton, he said, extending a hand. Professional problem solver and occasionally decent human being. Though my ship's eye, I might dispute the decent part. I dispute many things about you. A female voice emanated from the racing ship, dripping with sarcasm. Starting with your definition of professional. That's Rena, Jace explained, seemingly unbothered. She's programmed to hurt my feelings. I'm Marcus, and you just saved my life. Don't mention it. Well, actually, do mention it. I could use some work on my port stabilizer, and judging by all the repair equipment, you're my guy. Jace's expression turned more serious. Also, I've been tracking that particular Korvath pack for 3 days. They hit a Valyrian settlement, and I heard through the grapevine that some survivors escaped. I'm guessing they're here? Before Marcus could answer, Sivara emerged from the back room, Nissi still clinging to her. Her marks had settled to a cautious purple, and she studied Jace with wary intensity. You were tracking them? She asked. Why? Jace's casual demeanor shifted, something harder showing through. The Korvath hit a friend's trading post last month, killed his family, took everything of value. I've been returning the favor ever since. He looked at Nissi, and his expression softened. Plus, I don't like seeing kids in danger. Call it a weakness. It's not a weakness, Sivara said quietly. It's called being decent. See, Rena? Jace called toward his ship. Some people appreciate me. She's been here for 5 minutes, the AI responded dryly. Give it time. Despite the tension, Marcus found himself almost smiling. There was something disarming about Jace's easy humor, a lightness that felt alien after years of solitude. But they weren't out of danger yet. They'll be back, Marcus said, with more firepower and probably reinforcements. This shop isn't defensible against a serious assault. Agreed, Jace said, which is why I'm thinking we should not be here when they return. I've got room on my ship for 3 more passengers. 4, if someone doesn't mind sitting in the cargo hold. You'd take us? Sivara asked, disbelief coloring her voice. You don't even know us. I know enough. You're running from the Korvath, which makes you good people in my book. Plus, Jace's grin returned. My ship's been feeling empty lately. Could use some company besides Rena's constant criticism. My criticism is what keeps you alive, Rena interjected. For instance, I'm detecting 3 more Korvath signatures approaching from the north. Ada, 12 minutes. Marcus cursed. They were regrouping faster than he'd expected. We need to move now. Wait. Sivara's hand found Marcus's arm, her touch warm despite the shop's climate control. Her marks pulsed a soft amber color he didn't recognize, but somehow felt significant. You can't leave. This is your home, your business. It's a repair shop on a dying planet, Marcus replied, surprised by how little regret he felt. I can set up anywhere. You and Nissi, though you need to reach the free territories. That's not negotiable, so come with us. The words came out quickly, as if she'd been holding them back. You said it yourself 5 days on foot through harsh terrain. But with Jace's ship, we could make it in hours. You could help us start over, and then... She trailed off, uncertainty crossing her features. And then what? Marcus asked, aware that Jace was watching them with amused interest. Sivara's marks brightened, cycling through several colors before settling on a deep rose. And then maybe you'd find a reason to stay. The implication hung in the air between them. Marcus had known this woman for less than 2 hours. But something had shifted when he'd decided to protect her and Nissi. Some wall he'd built had developed cracks. And now she was offering him something he'd convinced himself. He didn't want any more connection. Purpose, a future beyond mere survival. Hate to break up this moment, Jace said, though he looked anything but apologetic. But Rena's right about those incoming hostiles. We need to grab what we can and go. Marcus made his decision in a heartbeat. Give me 3 minutes. I've got some gear I won't leave behind. He moved through the shop with practiced efficiency, gathering tools, personal items, and weapons into a reinforced case. 5 years of his life reduced to 2 bags of essentials. Sivara helped, seeming to understand instinctively what mattered and what could be left behind. Their hands brushed as they worked, each touch sending a spark of something he couldn't quite name through his system. Nissi had perked up at the prospect of escape. her earlier exhaustion replaced by nervous energy. She stayed close to Jace, who entertained her with conjuring tricks using small tools and sleight of hand. "You're good with kids," Sivara observed, a note of approval in her voice. "Had a little sister once," Jace replied, his usual levity dimming for a moment. "Long time ago." He caught Marcus's eye, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared loss, of people they'd failed to protect. Then Jace's grin returned. "Besides, kids are easy. It's adults who complicate everything." 7 minutes until contact, Rena announced. "I suggest we complicate things from the air rather than the ground." They rushed toward Jace's ship, a beautiful piece of engineering that Marcus's mechanical eye immediately appreciated. Sleek lines, custom modifications, and the kind of power systems usually reserved for military vessels. This was a ship built for speed and survival. As they boarded, Marcus took one last look at his repair shop. Smoke still rose from where the Korvath grenade had hit. The windows were shattered, tools scattered. 5 years of careful isolation, ending not with a whimper, but with pulse fire and explosions. Sivara's hand found his again. "Regrets?" "Surprisingly few," Marcus admitted. He squeezed her hand gently before following her into the ship. The interior was cramped, but well maintained, every surface showing signs of constant use and careful attention. Jace guided them to the passenger compartment, a space barely large enough for 3, with crash seats that had seen better days. "Strap in tight," Jace called from the cockpit. "The Korvath are close, and I prefer dramatic exits." Marcus helped Nissi with her harness before securing his own. Sivara sat beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, see the intricate patterns her marks made as they pulsed with what he was learning to recognize as anticipation. The ship's engines thrummed to life, a deep vibration that Marcus felt in his bones. Through the small viewport, he saw dust clouds on the horizon, the Korvath coming fast. "Rena, how's our power situation?" Jace's voice carried from the cockpit. "Adequate for a standard departure. Not adequate for the insane maneuvers you're about to attempt." "Good thing I'm not attempting anything insane, then. Just moderately reckless. The distinction matters to you?" "Always." The ship lifted smoothly, and Marcus watched his repair shop shrink below them. The Korvath vehicles appeared, their weapons tracking upward. Energy bolts lanced through the air, missing by meters as Jace threw the ship into a rolling climb that defied physics and probably several laws of aviation. Nissi squealed not with fear, but with delight. Her mother's marks blazed white, but she was smiling despite her obvious terror. Marcus found himself grinning too, the rush of adrenaline mixing with something lighter, more hopeful. They broke atmosphere in minutes, Ashara's red deserts falling away beneath them. The Korvath ships didn't follow. They weren't built for orbital pursuit. In the sudden quiet of space, Marcus felt the tension drain from his shoulders. "Well," Jace announced cheerfully, "that was refreshing. Rena, set course for the free territories. Passenger route, not the fun shortcuts. Defining fun as routes that violate multiple navigation laws and basic physics? You know me so well." Marcus unbuckled his harness and moved to the viewport, watching the stars appear as his eyes adjusted to the darkness. He felt rather than heard Sivara join him, her presence a warm constant at his side. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. You gave up your home for us." "I gave up a building," Marcus corrected. "Home is something different, something I haven't had in a long time." Sivara's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his, in a gesture that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. Her marks shifted to that deep rose color again, pulsing gently in the dim light. "Maybe," she said, her jade eyes reflecting the stars. We can figure out what home means. Together. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, at the play of bioluminescent light across their skin, and felt something long frozen in his chest begin to thaw. He'd spent 5 years running from connection, convinced that isolation was safety. But standing here with Sivara, with Nissi sleeping peacefully in her seat, and Jace's good-natured bickering with his AI filling the ship, Marcus realized he'd been wrong. Safety wasn't in isolation. It was in choosing who to stand beside when trouble came calling. Together, he agreed, and meant it. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Ashara and the Korvath far behind, Marcus Webb allowed himself something he hadn't permitted in years, hope for a future that involved more than just survival. Whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited in the free territories, he wouldn't face them alone. And somehow, that made all the difference.